We mentioned we've got a lot of coaching turnover in the SEC East, just one new head coach in the SEC West. It is Brian Harsin taking over for Gus Malzahn at Auburn. The Tigers went 6-4 against the SEC schedule, 6-5. And the impact of Brian Harsin's arrival comes with both, on-field and off-field questions at the time of the hire, with just a little bit of, looking at Harsin and trying to think about, in a league where we've had so much retread, so much, assistants getting hired, promoted to head coach, comes with a little bit of an outsider vibe. I don't think that is my burning question for spring practice, though. I think that I'm just looking for clues in terms of what Harsin wants Auburn to be. Now, I guess Bo Nix gets the tap at quarterback, but I think that I'd probably be more concerned. Like, I'm cool if he wants to make that an open competition and we really start to entertain who else is going to be there. Certainly Bo Nix has not put together a stellar resume that suggests that he is without a doubt the best player there. And I'm interested to see, because 24/7 Sports has great Auburn coverage. I'm interested to see the confidence in what things are going to look like defensively, because under Kevin Steele, defense was kind of the calling card of this team over the last couple of years. You got a lot of turnover, including, like the transfer of Big Cat Bryant. And so, I think most of my questions for Brian Harsin's Auburn are not totally scheme, but a little bit but a lot of identity. What are we going to expect the Tigers to look like? Because with the Gus bus, the putt-putt offense and, leading with your defensive line, like it was frustrating at times if you were an Auburn fan, but there was definitely an identity. And I've got, very little to be able to hang my hat on, just because Brian Harsin at Boise State and Brian Harsin, even as a coordinator and a head coach in between there, kind of multiple, kind of seems like he's willing to bend to the personnel. So where are our concerns, questions when it comes to Auburn looking ahead to 2021?
I'd like to see a quarterback competition this spring. I don't want to see, if I'm an Auburn fan, I don't want to see Bo Nix just being the unquestioned starter heading into 2021. I want there to be somebody at the spring, at a minimum, pushing him, if not taking the job from him. But at the same time, there's also a part of me that's, just from my angle, Auburn fan or not, maybe not playing under Gus Malzahn would be good for Bo Nix. Maybe being in a different offense with my offensive coordinator Mike Bobo and Brian Harsin could be good for Bo Nix's development, because as I've talked about on this show millions of times, I feel like I don't really remember any quarterbacks that Gus Malzahn developed as much as they just were finished products as soon as he got them, and they stayed the same the entire time that they were there. So it could go both ways. I think that's one thing I'm going to be keeping an eye on this spring for Auburn, is just, I want to see if Bo Nix is improving in this offense, or to see if there's somebody that's giving him the shot. And I'm not sure who on the roster that would be. I know that they have the 4-star kid in their 2021 class from Houston, whose name I cannot remember right now. Maybe
Demetrius Davis.
There we go. And I don't know if he's polished enough coming out of high school to be somebody we think could really push for the starting job or not, or if there's somebody else, maybe a veteran presence on the roster that, like an upperclassman who could push for it. I don't know, but I would like to see some competition there if I'm an Auburn fan.
I don't think you're going to see it. I think this is going to be Bo Nix all day. I don't think Demetrius Davis, is somebody who can come in and learn this offense year one. But my biggest concern isn't Bo Nix. As Tom mentioned, who's your favorite quarterback that Gus Malzahn's ever developed?
Nick Marshall, the former safety.
Yeah. Like, that's just not an offense that you don't see a lot of quarterback development chucking it around. And every time they tried to go to a quarterback that was more of a passer, it didn't look very good, right? Remember Sean White? Like, that offense that Gus runs is better when you have a guy who's a really good runner. It just is. But my real concern here is not Bo Nix. I don't think Bo Nix is that bad. My concern is, what are they going to do at receiver? Because Seth Williams is gone. Anthony Schwartz is gone. Like, their top pass catchers are gone. I think they only return, like, eyeballing this, maybe 20% of their catches and yards at receiver. And we know from Bill Connolly's numbers, pass catchers are, like, continuity year to year there matters a whole heck of a lot. That's a ton to replace. I'm not totally convinced they have the dudes to not have a major drop off there. And maybe it's, maybe it's Canyon, maybe Kobe Hudson, Evans was a good recruit. maybe Malcolm Johnson, maybe Zevion Capers steps up. They got some guys that were good recruits, but that's a whole lot to lose in 1 year, and I have some concerns about their passing game for that.
Agreed on everything you guys have said. I'm a little bit more worried about Bo Nix. Just, you developed some bad habits, and maybe it's because of that lack of development there. When I watch him play, I'm like, does he realize he's not Lamar Jackson? And yet he is pretty athletic. Like, you want to use that mobility to your advantage. And yet I felt like he relied on it too much. But some of that was probably system-based. Like, he wasn't getting deep into reads. Maybe it was because you didn't ask him to get deep into reads. So that'll be on Brian Harsin, where I do trust the track record with Harsin. Mike Bobo taking over the offense will be interesting. At least he's familiar with the SEC. Like, I think that was the wise thing that Harsin did, was bring in coordinators who are familiar with the landscape, familiar with the schemes, familiar with the personnel, to kind of rely on in that position. Offensive line should be strong. And receiver, I think it's a position like you can coach up a little bit, but you need somebody to emerge from that very inexperienced group to kind of take over the reins as a kind of lead dog. And I don't know if that's emerged yet, but maybe there's somebody there that we just don't know who it is yet. And then like defensive personnel, I think, there's going to be some issues there, but I kind of trust that they'll have a pretty good, I don't know if it's going to be dominant or a top, 2 or 3 defense in the SEC, but I think it'll be competitive enough to where it should be a pretty solid season for Auburn. I think it's interesting because we've gotten down to this point and we didn't really address it with Alabama. Like, I still think Alabama is probably going to win the West. And then who's the next best team? I think that conversation, it's kind of like Clemson in the ACC. Who's the next best team? I think that's in the West. You have the most intriguing race is who's going to be the second best team. And I think Auburn, along with A&M, along with LSU, and I would maybe even throw in Ole Miss into that group as a wild card, are in that conversation. So I think, all these teams have a lot of questions to answer, but there's going to be one of these teams is going to emerge, and it might be Auburn.
It would be very interesting if I'm proven wrong, but I've got Texas A&M a decided tier above Auburn right now. And with the defense, my reference point is 2019 Georgia vibes. Like, in the back half, like October and November, the 2019 Georgia team just ran off a bunch of 20-17 wins. They're just like, no, we've got one of the best defenses in the country. We'll only give up about 10, 14 points per game, and we'll do just enough offensively to be able to go out there and get a win. And that's kind of not a bad ceiling. Obviously, they made it to the SEC championship game before losing to Joe Burrow and LSU.